pay a room and board fee. And we abolished that because ultimately we know that reentry to be successful means people need economic freedom. Most people are thrown into our criminal justice system because they're in poverty. And we knew that. We knew we needed to invest in it. And so ultimately, that's one investment we've made. The other thing we've done that I think is critical is we've replaced our prison medical provider. Our former medical provider had a long history of not providing adequate care. And I'm really impressed in the beginnings here with our new medical provider. A couple other things I've accomplished as a commissioner. We raised the county minimum wage for our county workers. We have 1,600 workers across the county. We raised it to $16 an hour, which is just the basement, but we need to do better across the board for better pay in the county, but it's a step in the right direction. We also, we heard about ballots and how you can mail them in, right? Mail in ballots. Some people feel uncomfortable putting them in the mail, and so they want to drop them off at a drop box. When I was elected, we only had 2 drop boxes, the county building and the elections office. We now have 7. My strategy was 15. I had to settle for 7, what we could get across the finish line. But ultimately, there are now way more opportunities for you to find a ballot drop box where it goes directly to the elections headquarters. We also instituted something called ballot curing. Ballot curing simply means that you get the opportunity, if you make a small mistake on your mail-in ballot, to fix it. Sorry, I'm going way too fast is what I'm being told for the translator, so I will slow down a little bit. We'll try to be uncaffeinated, Justin. I apologize. I get real excited when I'm talking about things that we've been able to accomplish. Okay, so ballot curing is the opportunity for you to fix your ballot if you made a mistake like the date, or you signed in the wrong place, or you put it in the wrong envelope. And we were able to allow for that to be amended on election day if you make a mistake. That matters because, you know, civilian review boards with true accountability, with the mandate of what is expected, what the expectation is to identify yourself. All of these things need to be crafted into that because, you know, border enforcement has a place, interior enforcement has a place, but it has to be constitutional, and it has to be something where there are clear checks and balances. And so I believe we need to abolish, recreate something that ultimately the American people are in favor of, because what's happening right now, the American people are broadly not in favor of.
Thank you. For the Bhutanese Nepali community, where we have a large population here in Central Dauphin, like many other immigrant and refugee communities, our community has been a target of ICE operations. For us, being deported back to the country of origin is not simple, because our community members are being deported to the very country that oppressed them or their parents. And in most of those cases, they're already stateless and have ended back in the refugee camps. So I want to ask, what protections would you advocate for refugee communities, asylum seekers, and in general, what does Justin Douglas immigration policy look like?
Yeah, so let's just start here. Immigration policy is incredibly complicated. But at the same time, it doesn't have to be that complicated. Like, there's pieces of this that I think we need to make sure we clearly identify to the American people, which is that anybody who comes here as a refugee, let's just start there. Anybody who comes here as a refugee, you've gone through extreme vetting to get here, right? Our court system can manage your cases if you get into criminal issues, right? And you can suffer the due process of that and the consequences of decisions you've made here as a refugee. I don't think we give up on our refugee people that we've brought to this country. We've brought you here for a reason. I think of the reality of some of the individuals that were deported. The only thing they had on their criminal record was substance abuse. And I think of what it must be like to live for 2 decades in a refugee camp and the trauma that you've experienced, and the reality that, as Dauphin County has a drug and alcohol department, the reality that maybe we haven't done a great job of reaching our refugee communities with drug and alcohol resources. We don't do a great job of reaching communities in general. There's always so much demand and so little resources for that. We always have resources for war, but we typically don't have resources for mental health and substance abuse and these other realities that exist in our community. And so I think when we choose to take someone as a refugee into our country, we're making a commitment to them in the same way they're making a commitment to us. And I don't like going back on our commitment. And so what's happening right now, seeing people deported back to a country that ethnically cleansed them, that's us going back on our commitment to you. I'm against that. So I would want to put protections in that if someone comes on refugee status, that they are guaranteed a pathway to citizenship, and that we are not going to go back on that, and certainly not going to be deporting people to countries that mean them harm. And I'll say, I watched the planes, like we were tracking the planes that were taking the first group back, and we were trying to get feedback on what was happening. We didn't know if they were going to be jailed when they got there. We didn't know what was going to happen. And ultimately, the first report we got was that they were received favorably and given money. And we were like, whoa, that's not what we expected. But then we realized they were given money so that they could illegally cross a border and get out. And that meant we've had conversations with the UN talking about, what do we do now? They're stateless. Are they going to get jailed over here because now they've entered illegally, and some of them did get jailed, then they were released, but they're only allowed to be in the refugee camps. This is the type of thing that America does not have a history of doing, forcing people to be stateless. It's this administration that's doing that, and it's unprecedented. It's not something we've seen before. So I could go a lot on policy, but one specific to the Bhutanese Nepali community is, we've made a commitment to you. I'm not going back on that commitment. This president obviously is, but I'm not, and that would be central to my immigration policy.
Awesome. Thank you. And we will revisit some of the topics around immigration soon with some of the questions that we have collected. I would like to move a little bit into voting rights. You talked on this, you implemented ballot curing procedures when you were commissioner to safeguard voter rights. Now we are hearing about this so-called Save America Act, which many critics argue will restrict voting access, particularly for minority groups, even married women. How do you believe such legislation would impact voter access and protections? What will be your response to it as a congressman?
I will not support that legislation. That legislation exists to ensure that people are disenfranchised from voting. That is the purpose of that legislation. You're talking about an administration that seized ballots from a county in Georgia and is talking about federalizing elections. They don't care about your right to vote. They care about controlling the election. And they know that you in this room and across PA10 are incredibly powerful. They are scared that you might vote your conscience. They are scared that you might vote to say what they're doing is illegal and wrong and make them pay at the ballot box. And they know that's the one thing that they can't account for, no matter how many billions of dollars they get. They can't account for the fact that America has a system where you get a voice in the process. And so what are they going to try to do? They're going to try to take it away. And that act specifically, my wife's passport is currently expired. She would have she would have to find her birth certificate, but her birth certificate does not include her name as married to me. She'd then have to find her marriage license to show. And then all of this would very likely disenfranchise her. Just the amount of work she would have to do to go through, the administrative work she'd have to do to go through that. And my wife has a pretty simple situation in that, right? Now imagine that you have to get a passport in order to vote. Imagine you're in that circumstance. Maybe you don't have a birth certificate, you can't find it, you don't, whatever reason, but you have to get a passport and you have to go through that work. Who handles whether or not you get a passport? The federal government. Interesting. Interesting that the same people that want to tell you you need this piece of paper in order to vote are also the ones who determine whether you get the piece of paper. And I remember, I've done a lot of international travel, and I remember waiting for my passport the first time, and I had applied for my passport 4 months before I was going out of the country, not advised. It was like 3 months and 1 week, and I thought I was going to maybe not even get it in time. And so if this were to go into action, and the date was to be, let's say, November, but it went into action in the middle of the summer, there's plenty of people that even just administratively on normal circumstances might not be able to get their passport in enough time to register to vote in the state that they're in. And I'll remind everybody, our Constitution says that states run elections, not the federal government. And so that's critically important. I'm against the Save America Act. I think if America needs saving from anything, it's this administration.
Thank you. And so I would like to move at this time to one of the questions that we have collected from the audience here today. Other than immigration policy and ICE, this area has a lot of immigrant and refugee communities. How will you support these communities as a congressman? You know, what kind of policy initiatives will you be advocating for as the immigrant refugee communities continue to grow in Central PA?
Yeah, so let's just talk about as a county commissioner. As a county commissioner, I've supported the Bhutanese community of Harrisburg, and Central PA now I think is the new name, but I've supported them through grants that they've desired to get. One of the challenges we've had in that community is mental health accessibility. So I've supported grants from the county through the form of typically gaming grants or human service dollars that go to help aid the work that they're doing, to help build programs that assist their community. And so I would continue that work as a congressman, money that we can bring back to the district that would invest in mental health care, invest in resources for education and opportunity for all immigrant communities. I'm also committed to hiring a diverse staff as a congressman. I want to ensure that I have someone on my staff from the Bhutanese Nepali community, whether that's here locally or in DC, that ultimately can ensure that decisions I'm making, I'm getting feedback from the communities that are represented here. And so it's important to me that my staff looks like the district that I represent.
Thank you. And we have a young participant here in the audience. I would like to call upon her to ask a question. Rasuka, if you want to ask a question. I'm going to pass the mic to her.
I think we all thought it was like the 2-year-old, right? I thought it was too. I was like, this is fabulous. Sorry.
Hi, my name is Rasuka. I am from Mechanicsburg. So in 2008, Pennsylvania signed in a law called Climate Change Act in 2008, which outlines a pathway for reducing statewide greenhouse gas emissions with a focus of, or with a goal of achieving net zero by 2050. So my question to you is, what specifically would you do to ensure that America combats this rising concern of climate change?
Good question. Thank you so much for the question. So the first thing I would do is say what we saw with Biden's infrastructure investment and his investment in wind and solar specifically went to aid Pennsylvania's desire for this. There were many projects that were greenlit and started that then, as this administration currently got into effect, they pulled all that money back. And by the way, that money was designated by Congress to go to those things. The executive branch does not have the power to do that, but they don't care what they have the power to do. They say they have the power to do everything. And Congress has no backbone to say no or to go file a lawsuit or to go ensure that those monies stay there. So as a congressman, I would first say we need to restore those monies to ensure that they go to those projects that we're going to aid in exactly what you're talking about, getting to 2050 at a net zero. Look, I have 3 kids, a 16-year-old, a 14-year-old, and an 11-year-old. We have one Earth. And ultimately, like, I want them to have clean air. I want them to have clean water. I want them to have opportunity, not consistent disasters. I sit on a board called NACO, Justice and Public Safety. NACO stands for National Association of Counties, and I'm on that committee. And we talk regularly about FEMA funding because right now we're seeing an increase in natural disasters, largely related to climate change, but we're seeing a divestment in funds for natural disasters. So we're going to continue to see this be a problem if we don't address it. We need to have sustainable energy resources, and so I'm committed to voting for legislation that would support that. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. And going along similar lines of climate change, I have a question here from the audience. Something that I personally have felt recently, as well as a resident of Pennsylvania and Dauphin County, is rising utility costs. And the question specifically asks, how will you manage or stop data centers being built, which is one of the causes of these rising utility costs?
Yeah, so data centers need to pay their fair share. If they are going to go into place and your utility costs are going to rise, we need to ensure as legislators that we're doing the work on the front end to protect residents first, protect the environment as well. I will say there's new technology I'm learning of where certain data centers are requiring less water, which is very good. It's on a closed loop, basically. And once the water's, there, it's all they need to keep what they need to keep cool. So that technology can be mandated to be what your region uses, basically saying, if you're not going to bring the most up-to-date technology that requires less water use, then you're not welcome to plant your data center here. Certain municipalities across the country have instituted that reality. And there's really not much right now in central Pennsylvania to curb a lot of that, those people who want to come in and invest. And then we also have to talk about the practices that they come in with, because here's what they do. Let's say I want to put one data center in, okay, just one. I will buy 4 different properties, lock up those properties in deals where I say, if I have to back out of the deal, I might lose $500,000, right? And then I'll say I have to do due diligence on the property. But really what I'm doing is I'm forcing all 4 of the municipalities, while they're each under contract, to compete with each other to who's going to give me the best deal to bring my data center to their area. And that's a way that they get tax breaks, incentives, that the controls that I'm talking about, ensuring that the residents are prioritized, aren't prioritized. We have to end those practices. We have to say you can't do that. But we've seen other companies do. Walmart does this. Okay, this isn't like a new thing. This is corporations do this. So one of the reasons we're not taking corporate PAC money is because when you take corporate PAC money, you answer to corporations, not the people. And so I want to make sure you have affordability. Affordability means we have to prioritize our residents in these decisions. Data centers are coming. They're probably not going to come at the level that people are expecting right now, but they are going to come. They're not going to bring a ton of jobs to the region. It'd be one thing to give a tax break to somebody bringing in 700 really good paying jobs. Those are the types of tax breaks that I'm usually in favor of, I'll be honest, because it's such an investment to the community, and you can even earmark a certain amount of these people need to be hired from Dauphin County, for example, so you can really advance the economic development of the region. In this particular case, unfortunately, as a commissioner, I don't have much oversight. The people you need to be talking to are your congressmen, but then also you need to be talking to your municipal leaders, because it's zoning boards, zoning hearing boards, and municipal township leaders or borough leaders that will be making these decisions. And so I do know Commissioner Hartwick, my colleague, is really passionate about this in the sense of getting a group together to craft out best practices. They already did a visit. I was unable to attend, but they did a visit to Northern Virginia, to Loudoun County, and visited a number of data centers, as that's kind of the Silicon Valley of data centers. They were able to visit and kind of get some sketch ideas for best practices. I'm looking forward to seeing what that group, that committee he creates, is able to come away with for best practices for our region, and then encourage our municipal leaders to adopt those. But until then, I think everyone should have a healthy skepticism of what this is going to bring to our region, specifically around utilities. And that's the same skepticism I would bring to any legislation I would support or not support.
Thank you. And talking along the lines of rising costs, I have another question here from the audience. We have been experiencing diminishing returns in our quality of life, with our paychecks remaining stagnant while inflation and cost of living has dramatically increased. People are being squeezed left and right, and communities across the political spectrum are being neglected. What is your perspective on restoring economic security, and do you have any policies or ideas to pass in Congress?
Yeah, so two things. First, we don't have a Republican versus Democrat issue. We have a rich versus poor issue in this country. Rich people get all the tax breaks. If you paid $1 last year in taxes, you paid more than Elon Musk, you paid more than Jeff Bezos. All of these people who are incredibly wealthy get the opportunity to pay people who are running for office, not me, but other people like me. And when they pay into their campaigns, they expect legislation that supports their pocketbooks. And that's what they get. And they know how to offshore money. They know how to count money as losses. They know how to ensure that they are insulated from any tax that the federal government would choose to apply to them. You, however, go to your local H&R Block and are like, hey, how much money did I get back this year? And they're like, well, actually, you owe the government $200. And you're like, how's that possible? I feel like I'm always paying so much money. And this is the unfortunate reality of a tax code that ultimately serves the wealthy and does not serve you. So we have to start there, because the idea that America doesn't have money to solve our problems, to create investment for the middle class, is a lie. We just are choosing not to tax the people that have benefited from a system that has made them incredibly wealthy. This country and the structure of our economics is what helped create a Jeff Bezos and create an Elon Musk. They owe it to the foundation of their success being the incubator that is America. And so they have to pay their fair share. That has to happen. We need a new deal. That's what I've been saying. We need a new deal. If you're not familiar, the New Deal is what FDR came out with that ultimately made the middle class the strongest it's ever been. It was an investment in social programs, uplift programs that got people into the middle class. We have to have an economic structure that does that. When my parents were in their 20s, the average first-time homebuyer was 25 years old. We know now the average first-time homebuyer is 40 years old. That is a massive decrease in economic freedom for our country. And that decrease matters because the biggest thing people build equity in that give them financial freedom is their home. And so when you don't own a home early, you're far less likely to build economic stability over the course of your life that you likely hand down to your family. That means we're going to see generational impacts by not allowing people to get into homes sooner. So I would say, because I could go 100 different places with this question, and we don't have the time, I would say we have to find a way to get people into housing. Affordable housing, we need to build more stock. We need to have the ability for first-time homebuyer programs to be invested in. I, as a county commissioner, took our first-time homebuyer program from $3,000 aid to $6,000 aid. If you're unaware of that and you don't own a home in Dauphin County, If you want to own a home, you can apply through the county and get $6,000 towards your down payment. We need more programs like that throughout the country, and we need to invest federally in that kind of thing.
Thank you. And you brought up a good point about the growing income inequality in America. So let's briefly talk about the influence that the wealthy have over our governments, because I see a couple of questions from the audience around that. What are your thoughts on congressional stock trading, and do you think Congress members should be banned from trading?
100%. No one should benefit off the seat that they sit in and the information that they have. But let's be very clear about some things, because this is where Congress will try to smoke and mirrors you. There are, I think, 3 or 4 different pieces of legislation for banning stock trading right now, and only one of them is real. And what do I mean by that? I mean, everyone wants to say ban stock trading because 80% of Americans think it's absolutely insane that people can trade stocks on inside information and get wealthy. That's a universal thing across Republicans and Democrats and independents. What some of that legislation says that certain people support is a ban on stock trading. And if you're caught doing it, a $250 penalty. Okay? I think if you are stock trading, you need to go before the Ethics Commission. You need to be at threat of losing your seat. That's what I think it needs to be, and I think whatever you made off that stock trading that can be proven within that, you need to you're forced to pay that back in some way to the American people, and then you're assessed a penalty, and the penalty better not be $250 when we know that some people have become millionaires off their seat as Congress people. So. We have to be this is where we got to be very diligent. There's a lot of people that'll tell you they want to ban stock trading, but what version of a ban do they want? Because there are plenty of things in Washington where people will break the rules and the consequences don't exist when they do. So we have to have legislation that makes it very clear the consequence. I support the passage of what will ultimately ban stock trading. Not just for members of Congress, but their family members too. And that would be that the consequences for you doing that jeopardize your very seat as a congressperson or as a senator.
Thank you. And I would like to turn our focus back to a immigrant community-related question. With this negative tone, this rhetoric against immigrant and communities of color that is, being spread right now across the country, a lot of our community members are scared. They're scared to participate in, their civic duties. They're afraid to go out and engage in the community. What do you say to immigrant communities, communities of color, on, what they should do to engage and to go through this situation right now?
You're right to be afraid. I don't know what it's like to be somebody who's an immigrant in this country. I've seen it. I've watched it on my phone. I've heard the stories in our community. I've sat with the families who have experienced it. I know people who currently won't leave their house because they're afraid. And the hard part I have as a commissioner is I want to give you hope that you don't need to be afraid, but I also know what this administration is capable of and what they've accomplished in places like Minnesota and California and Chicago and even right here in Dauphin County. And so I think only you can judge what level of involvement in your community you're comfortable with right now, with the risks that exist. I will say this is one of the reasons why it's so important that we go against the Save America Act, because mail-in ballots are a way for you to participate civically and to get elected officials that are going to fight for you in office. And it's also a way that protects you where you don't have to leave your house to do it. I want you to feel safe in your community, and I'm committed to that as a commissioner and as a candidate for Congress. But I also know, you know, the realities of the time that we're in. The realities of just last week, I sat with a family who, you know, I sat with a wife who her husband has been taken by ICE and been detained for more than 4 months now. And his criminal charges were dropped. They were false charges, but ICE won't release them. And the impact that's having on his wife and his kids. And I see the brutality of what's happening, and I understand the feeling of pulling back. But what I will say, that's what they want us to do. They want us to pull back because they know that you have a lot of power. They know that your vote carries a lot of weight. And so don't disengage from voting. Know that your vote can make a massive difference in this election and in future elections. And America is in crisis right now. We can't deny that reality. But when America has been in crisis in the past, it has been when people who are disenfranchised have risen up, made their voice a collective and united, and said no. That we've seen great strides forward for justice, that we've seen great strides forward for equality. And I think we're in another one of those moments now. So while I can't tell you what to do, I will encourage you to be active and be engaged to the level that you're able, and do not miss the opportunity to vote.
Thank you. And in terms of staying engaged, there's a question here on, you know, many times, especially our immigrant communities do not know, you know, what sort of decisions, what sort of policies are being implemented in their local county area or even nationally. How can citizens stay more informed about these important decisions, and how can you help, you know, make that more available to everyone?
Look, I think we need to do a lot better at this. When I came in as a county commissioner, we had agendas that were not very detailed. Members of the community who tried to engage in that process would be like, what's this contract about? It doesn't even have a dollar amount on it. It doesn't even tell me any information about how long the contract is. It doesn't. So if you look at our agendas now, some people hate me for it, but they're like 60-page agendas sometimes because they have all kinds of details about the contract, about the length of the contract. Is it a renewed contract or is it a new contract? All of these things are ways we've increased transparency. We've also increased transparency by now live streaming the county commissioner meetings. Prior to me being an elected official, they were not live streamed. They are now live streamed. But all of this is about transparency. I think there's a whole nother conversation about accessibility. I don't think local government's very accessible, and certainly not accessible to translation services, certainly not accessible to people that are differently abled. There's a lot of things we need to increase to do better. I would say if you want to be engaged, a good way of getting engaged is to come to a commissioner meeting. Let's talk about the reality that those aren't accessible either because they happen at Wednesday at 10 a.m. You're probably at work. Most people are. I'm not in support of that time. That's the time that they were when I got there. Ultimately, we have to do work to be more accessible. I try to stay active on social as a commissioner to try to update the community on things that are happening, to try to share about the work our office is doing. The other thing our office is, we respond to everyone who reaches out to our office. And I mean everyone. Let me give you an example. Someone could literally call me, and this has happened, cursing me out for raising their taxes, which has happened. And Allie's in the room. She's my executive assistant, and she'll forward me that message and be like, this is a fun one. And she'll walk into my office and say, did you see the email I just sent you that has the voicemail? And I'll pull it up, and then I'll be like, then I'll type their number in my phone and call them. And she's like, you're calling them? I'm like, yeah, I'm calling them. They called me. I'm calling them back. And they're usually disarmed. They're like, oh, you actually called back? You're actually accessible? And then I talked to him and I'm like, hey, I'm really sorry. Here's the situation I'm dealing with. We went 20 years without raising taxes. The county's in a financial crisis. This is the only way we're going to make the budget work. And I talk them through it. Usually they're still not happy, but they understand because I tried to make the issue accessible to them. And then I share with them, you sound like you might be part of the retirement community. Have you heard about the Pennsylvania rent rebate program? And they're usually like, no, I haven't. And I say, you can actually get relief if you apply. Here's the application. We've literally had people say, I don't know how to do this application. We'll bring them into the office and they'll sit with my executive assistant. We'll help them fill out the application. We want to be as accessible as possible. So you can always reach out to us directly if you're not sure about how county government's working. That's the way I plan on running my congressional offices. So there'll be 3 local congressional offices, 1 in each of the counties. I want those offices to be hubs where people can access government and they can access the resources. And even if they don't understand them, have their hand held through the process to make sure they get the resources that they're entitled to.
So we have just a few more questions remaining, and then we'll also, if there is time at the end, if anyone else would like to ask any further questions, you'll have the opportunity to do that as well. There's a question here about education, and how do you plan on making education more affordable for Pennsylvanians?
So my wife is a 3rd grade teacher in Harrisburg City. Education and public education specifically is incredibly important to me. I have 3 kids that are products of public education. They go to Lower Dauphin School District. I've seen the power that public schools have on being invested in and teachers being invested in. Look, my wife does not make a lot of money as a teacher. I would support Bernie Sanders' Pay Teachers Act because it would affect my wife, but it would also affect our entire public education all the teachers, because teachers are grossly underpaid for what they provide to our communities, and they need to be paid better. Now, when it comes to education and making it more affordable, as far as I would assume that question, it didn't specifically state it, but I would assume it's talking about college education and making it more affordable. Look, in 2008, Obama had a plan to make colleges more affordable, and his plan was that anybody who would work 20 hours at a nonprofit in a week would get free education at any state school in that state. I thought that was a great program. It never got off the ground. It never became actualized. But I thought on the campaign trail, he talked a lot about that program being a program where you're increasing public service. So people are serving in nonprofit capacities for 20 hours a week. Ultimately, they're gaining a vision and purpose for their life while they're doing that, and they're interacting with their community. And then they're able to use the remainder 20 hours to work on their education and to get it for free without any hindrance of debt. That would be a phenomenal thing for, I interact with nonprofits daily as a county commissioner. They're grossly understaffed. They're trying to find resources. This would be an amazing influx of people to a lot of the great nonprofits we have in our community. That's an idea that I would support, but it's a real problem right now. And let me express to you the problem even personally. I was the first in my family to go to college, okay, which was like a badge of honor. And everyone told me, you have to go to college. That's the only way. It's almost like a bet you have to make on yourself, right? That's a bet I would tell people not to make right now, because I have 2 degrees, okay? I even went to get my master's, so I have 2 degrees. I'm still paying on my college debt. My daughter is 16 and looking to go to college. I will be co-signing on her loans while I am still paying off my debt. And I'm in a okay position. Like I'm in a far more privileged position than most Americans. And that's my circumstance. I say that to say this is untenable for us to continue to send people down this road of debt. It's why people can't purchase homes till they're 40 or after. It's why we're seeing this great economic despair for millennials all the way down. If that continues, it's going to have repercussions for generations to come. So we also have to find a way to look back and say, what debt can we relieve? Biden tried to do that, and he was blocked by Congress doing that. We have to find a way to ensure that those kinds of things are considered too. The other thing is teachers, And I was a pastor for 20 years. If you work at a nonprofit, you're given the opportunity to ask for loan forgiveness, a loan forgiveness program that's existed forever. I applied every single year for that program. It was a laborious thing to apply every year. Never once heard a response. And I'll tell you, I'm still paying on my student loans, so I was never successful. My wife, the same. And so even the things we have in place, they don't function administratively to actually provide what they say they'll provide. We need a substantive investment in education and to make the pathway to that very accessible.
Thank you. And like I said, we are approaching the end of the questions. I have here one more question, and your primary opponent in the primary election is not here today. So there's a question here on...
Is that what this seat's here for?
There is a question here on what makes you different and why should voters choose you?
What makes me different? I'm the only one running with elected experience. So I have 2 years of elected experience as a county commissioner. I've lived in this district for 11 years. Ever since I moved here from Wisconsin, I've lived here. My position on immigration is completely different. You know, last cycle we saw a ad by the same candidate that talked about deporting all the illegals. And even using that terminology in an ad as a Democrat was triggering to me and many of my friends. And I would just say I don't take corporate PAC money. She does. And I have a history and a track record of delivering on what I ran on as a commissioner. So I had a platform I ran on as a commissioner. I was successful in getting into office, and I didn't forget that after I took my oath of office. Most elected officials have amnesia from the campaign trail when they get into office. I will not. What I'm saying right now, the ideas I have, I mean it. And no influence or power is going to sway me from what I mean, which is why I think the party that I'm running in is afraid of me. Because it's far easier to elect people who fall in line than to elect people who have a mind of their own. And we need more people in Congress of all parties that have a mind of their own and are willing to break from party lines to support their residents at home. And that's what I plan on doing if necessary.
Thank you. That was the end of the collected questions that we have today. I have an audience member here who would like to ask a question to you. Mr. Aaron Acharya, I would like to invite you to ask your question.
Hello, Aaron.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much for doing this. I'm going to sit down and talk if that's
yes,
okay.
Go ahead.
So I viewed all of your positions on your campaign website. Thank you so much for putting it so nicely and point by point. It's very easy to go through and read compared to Janelle's, which is very short, brief, and kind of vague at points. We need to keep the hope going. I know that. And how you answer my question is not going to change the way I will vote, right? But the median wealth of U.S. senators is around between $1.76 million to $3 million, right? Similarly, with the House of Representatives, it's a little bit lower, but still there are a majority of them are millionaires out there. And earlier we just said the issue is between the rich and the poor. Majority of your colleagues in Congress on the Hill are going to be the rich people. What plans and techniques and ideas do you have to create a consensus there to bring your priorities to practice? How do you work in that kind of a situation? The machinations, I don't understand the Hill. It looks like dog-eat-dog world out there. How do you
Trust
bring
me,
your
it
politics
is.
there? So I just want to know. I trust you. You'll do good things, but the fact that you want to do good things, and then the forum they are going to that will actually allow you to do good things are two different things, right? So yeah, I'm sure that for the last many months you have studied the Congress and who is there and how do they work. Bernie has been there for a while, amazing person, very human, empathetic, but it almost seems like he's where he has been for so many years and has not been able to move things forward. How will you create that consensus to bring your policies to fruition? Thank you.
Yeah, but more people in our generation are recognizing, yeah, great question. I just want to say this, more people in our generation are recognizing that what Bernie's been saying for 30 years is the truth. And I think the consistency that he's maybe not been able to pass policy per se, but he's been able to shape public opinion, that matters too, because the more and more public opinion comes to it, the more and more parties will see the consequences at the ballot box if they don't, adjust. So I do think it's about also communicating well and shaping the argument, the theory of the case, if you will. But let me talk about one idea from what you said. We need to send people to Congress who think creatively, okay? So what do I mean by that? I mean, if you've been in a job for 20 years, you're probably like, I walk in, I do this, then I do this, then I do this, then I go home, right? That there is no like, I'm not looking at doing the job differently. If someone tells me we're upgrading our system and it's going to be something else, you're like, oh my gosh, I got to learn to do something new, right? That's how Congress is. Congress is, we like it the way we like it, this is the way we do it, and there's no other way of doing it. So Citizens United gave billionaires and millionaires the most power they've ever had. They can buy elections now. And the only way you can change Citizens United, because it's about how much they're allowed to fundraise, right, is by a constitutional amendment, which is very hard to get, okay? Because it requires a lot of consensus to get that. But no one's thinking creative. Nothing in Citizens United says you can't limit how much a congressional campaign can spend. We could pass legislation saying you can only spend double the average median in your congressional district in the primary and in the general. In this case, in this particular race, it'd be $150,000 in the primary and $150,000 in the general. Raise $20 million. Go ahead. You can't spend it. Those are the kinds of creative legislation that we need people arguing on the floor and giving Americans inspiration for, oh, maybe we do have control. Maybe we could claw back control without a constitutional amendment. Maybe we could actually rein in some of this influence. Those are the kinds of things I want to look for and I want to build consensus with, because there are plenty of people in Congress who don't like being beholden to the millionaires and billionaires. Even if their net worth is $1 million, they still don't like being beholden to these people who call them and put pressure on them to vote for something that their conscience doesn't support. And so in Congress specifically, you run every 2 years. So the moment you're elected, you're thinking about getting reelected. And when a fundraiser calls you and says they're going to pull out from backing you, you know that has immediate consequences. Not a senator, consequences in 6 years, consequences in a few months. And so that leverage, we got to take the power back. And we got to create measures to do that. That will curb the wealthy influence.
Thank you. And thank you for the question. Is there any other questions from the audience? Anyone who would like to ask a question? Okay.
First of all, thank you, Commissioner Douglas. It's a Sunday evening and it's a family time. You made it to this town hall. Thank you so much for your time. From stock tradings to climate to education, we covered pretty much everything, and I'm just coming back to the community that we live in. Gambling across Pennsylvania has grown rapidly, and we now see gaming machines in every local stores. Well, it generates revenue. It's a good thing. Some residents worry very much about its impact on our own communities. How do you plan to balance economic benefits with responsible regulation?
It's a great question. So the challenge here is that some of this legislation, and if you're talking specifically about the gaming machines that we see in gas stations, that is a state level issue. I see Sarah Agerton here. I'm sure she has a thought on that. But the state will ultimately legislate how those are taxed, because my understanding is they label them as skill games, and then anytime they get challenged as it's a game of chance, they change the algorithm and keep it a skill game. And so basically that just means we need to change the way we write legislation around skill versus chance, and it's a way they kind of craft to get out of paying taxes. But for example, we have a casino in Dauphin County. That casino, services a lot of people. It's a tourism attraction, if you will, so there's benefit for economic development. But we also know if someone goes and gambles their paycheck away and they can't pay rent, it creates a lot of economic disadvantage in our region, right? And so I know in our human services we have gambling aid, in the sense of like the ability to help people with resources if they're dealing with a gambling addiction. And so we need to continue to support those resources. I tend to be more libertarian on this. If someone wants to gamble, if that's something they want to do, they have the right to do that as an American citizen. It's their free right to do that. But I don't think we should be covering the consequences of that. But I think we got to be very clear about the consequences. And then I think we also have to curb the addictive behaviors. So like we've made gambling so easy you can pull out your phone and vote and do something quickly. We've also made gambling a situation where you can gamble on who's going to win the coin toss. Like we've made it all the way down to these small little prop bets. Those types of things have created, they're using the same algorithms that like Facebook creates to like get inside the head of somebody. And so we've got to be very cautious about that. I'll say one more thing on this because it's really important. Poly market. We're now seeing people gamble on whether or not we're going to bomb Iran. And we saw a bunch of puts on that, meaning like bets on that, 24 hours before we went to war with Iran, because they were insiders who were part of, very likely had security clearances, knew we were preparing for war, and put millions of dollars of bets on there and made that. That kind of stuff has to end 100%. Like we can't have this poly market kind of thing where you have people using privilege to put these bets on and further enrich themselves from the seats they hold. Good question though. Talk to Sarah afterwards. She probably has some thoughts on that from a state perspective.
Thank you. We have a few more minutes for some additional questions. Is there anyone? Yes.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I had actually just attended a certain meeting up in northern Dauphin County, and the thought just came to mind. As we know, there are a lot of disparities in our community, and some communities are significantly underserved. There are communities that do not have a local grocery option. There are communities that do not have a local primary care provider, and some communities have to travel miles and minutes upon end just for basic amenities and services. Over time, we have seen what we have always known to be public goods, like healthcare and access to food, to be commodified under private interests. I was wondering if you have any thoughts with respect to some of the disparities that we face as communities with respect to access to healthy food options, to primary care providers, and to other basic services that we would find in our communities. Thank you.
Great question. So let's start here. The leading cause of bankruptcy in America, does anybody know? Medical debt is the leading cause of bankruptcy in America. So not only is it not accessible in the sense that it's right down the road from you or in your local community, it's also probably going to break your bank whenever you get there. That has to end. I'm running on a Medicare for All platform, universal health care coverage. We need that in America right now. I also think we need community-style hospitals. We need to have access to doctors in your community, whether those are clinics or whether those are hospitals. And the reason we don't have them is because they're operating many on a for-profit type system. The goal is about profit. The goal is about ensuring they return money to their stakeholders. And we have to remove the profit motive from medical access. because that's the limiting factor right now. So if you make a system that doesn't make it about profiting, but it makes it about accessibility and affordability, we're going to have better outcomes on the back end. So that's something important. You talk about, I think, Northern Dauphin. Northern Dauphin, I'm thankful that the commissioners a while ago made a commitment to a Northern Dauphin Human Services Center. And we do a lot of great outreach through that Human Services Center, but there's always need for more outreach up there. Many opportunities for food insecurity run through that office that help people get food that they need, and many other services. From the federal government perspective, look, what the big, beautiful bill did basically was disenfranchise all of us in this room in accessing resources. But who did it not disenfranchise? The incredibly wealthy. It did not disenfranchise ICE. It basically gave them a blank check, right? With the funding that they got out of that bill. We have to understand that people who voted for that need to suffer the consequences of supporting that, you know? And that's why I think this race is so critical, because our representative supported that and supported the reality of it lowering access to food, lowering access to health care, obviously the ACA credits, and kicking people off health care or putting them on plans that are not going to serve them. One more thing on this. As a county commissioner, I've had multiple people in my office talking about and dreaming about and working for some type of grocery store in Harrisburg, meaning downtown Harrisburg. Because while Harrisburg has so much to offer, it does not have a grocery store. And the residents that live there will either have to have their groceries delivered, pay a premium for that, or even more likely, they take an Uber to the grocery store and an Uber back, or they have to try to work through public transportation, which, while we are increasing public transportation opportunities in Harrisburg, and it's something I'm passionate about, I've sat, actually, believe it or not, with Scott Perry and encouraged his investment in our CAT infrastructure, which we're trying to invest in a new hub right there in Harrisburg. We know that funding's coming slowly, but we need investment in public transit. But we need a grocery store right there that has fresh produce, fresh meat, has, you know, that accessibility to the community, and that would really help draw people to Harrisburg to live there, but also it would help make people not have to own a car if they live in Harrisburg, because they would have a local grocery store. So I would be committed to continuing that work as a congressman with even more resources than I have as a county commissioner. And not just for Harrisburg, but all the communities who need a grocery store across the district.
Thank you. So we are at the end of our event today. Thank you, Commissioner Douglas, once again. Before we close, is there anything, last remarks that you would like to say before we close?
Yeah, so I got a couple days away this week to go with my family, because after petition time, basically it was like sun up to sundown, work nonstop. And I just want to say, this work, if you're engaged politically in any way, it's exhausting work, right? I mean, and I say that to say, make sure you're taking care of yourself, first and foremost. Make sure you're finding time to rest, finding time to put the phone away and not doom scroll, because that can be such an addiction in its own self, but also it can be the kind of thing that makes you think the world is hopeless. Reconnect with the people that you love the most and your community. Do that work. And then when you are doing the work, support the people who are actually fighting for change. Because unfortunately, there's so few of us right now, and we need to band together. We need to unite. And that's the only way I feel like we're going to take America out of this crisis that it's in right now. So my name's Justin Douglas. I'm running for Congress in Pennsylvania's 10th District. The vote is on May 19th, but you can mail your ballot in earlier than that. If you are a registered independent, you'll need to register Democrat in order to vote for me. So make sure you do that work. You can reach out to our office and we can help you get the resources you need to do that. JustinDouglas.us for any more information about my campaign. It has been a pleasure and an honor to be with you tonight. Thank you so much for having this and for having me.
Thank you, Commissioner. And thank you, everyone, for your participation and engagement with the questions. I would like to invite Mohan and Robin to close the event.
Thank you all so much for being here for the last 2 hours. Can I get one more round of applause for Commissioner Douglas? for showing up and for hearing from our community. So there's an incredibly important vote on May 19th. But there's almost as important a vote on March 19th, and that is the APIPA endorsement vote. So we're a member-led, community-led organization, which means that if you're a member of our Asian American community and you live in Pennsylvania, if you sign up to become a member of APIPA, you get to decide who we support, which candidates we throw down for, and what future we get to build together. So Robin here is an incredibly important, on his own personal time, incredibly important leader at APIPA and member. He gets a vote in who we endorse on March 19th. If you also want a vote and you're a member of our community, we would love for you to sign up at that back table, the same one that you checked in at, to become a member of APIPA, commit to building the future we want together in a Commonwealth that works for all of our Asian American communities, and throw down to support the candidates who are going to listen to and fight for our community. So thank you so much, and we'll see you in the streets.